もしやコスモでは。
Cosmo needs me free.
Cosmo AP Luxury Sports.
Welcome to episode 31 of my 76 Mazda Cosmo restoration. This is part 3 of the Vintage Air HVAC system installation. As I alluded to last episode, this time we're going to tackle the wiring and the ducting. So, let's jump right in. There's not much to this wiring harness. Basically the main power relay and the full speed blower relay, because a lot of the wires come off the ECU box and connect up to the controls, which are going to be in the dash somewhere around here. So I already checked clearance behind the dash, and it looks like I'll be able to mount my 2 relays right here. Just using 2 M6 nutserts to provide a solid place to bolt on the relays. Can't be too aggressive when putting these things in the plastic. Once they grip, stop. Otherwise you severely distort the plastic and could rip right through. Okay, the blower connection is really easy. It just connects to the blower. The rest of these wires need to be run to their respective locations. The red wire is the main power wire, which will go over here. I brought all the grounds out through the same hole that I cut to allow the heater hose to pass through. Seemed logical. And we'll just put them all on the bolt. And then tighten up the bolt. Right from Vintage Air, the harness can basically just be laid out into the car and connected as is, and it'll function just fine. However, because I am going to run the compressor control through my MegaSquirt, I'm going to have to make a few changes to the harness. Why would I run it through the MegaSquirt? Well, primarily with the MegaSquirt having control of the compressor and knowing when the AC's on, can provide a few useful functions. For example, it can shut down the AC at wide open throttle, like most modern cars. It can idle up the engine, and it can control the electric fans to cool the condenser. So, I have to run a few extra wires to accomplish that, mainly because I need to wire up a relay in the engine bay to switch the compressor clutch on and off. The compressor clutch relay is going to be located right here. And in episode 24, when I wired the MegaSquirt, I already ran the wire which will activate that relay. So now I just have to run all the necessary wires to that relay. So there are 2 red wires. One will provide power to the relay coil, and one will provide the 12 volts to power the compressor clutch. This blue wire snakes all the way under the dash and ends up on the engine. It will be used to activate the compressor, and it'll have to come all the way over here to be connected to the trinary switch. The other side of the trinary switch will come back to the relay. The first connection is switched 12 volt power to the Vintage Air wiring harness, and then switch 12 volts to the coil of the relay up in the engine bay for the AC compressor. Now Vintage Air just provides a quick connect style, but that really doesn't interface with anything I have, so that goes away. And I'm just twisting the wires together, applying, of course, a little bit of dielectric grease to keep the connection fresh. Yuck. Then I'll just install a ring terminal so that it can connect to the switched 12 volt ignition source panel on my ECU panel, because that's a really convenient place to get the power for stuff like this. Almost like the person designing the ECU panel, you know, thought of that. This is only a few hundred milliamps at the most, because it just is for a few relay coils, so it really doesn't have any effect on anything. And I'll just screw that in place. This blue wire on the vintage air harness is for the thermostatic AC compressor control. So it just activates on 12 volts when the AC compressor needs to be activated. This wire here on the MegaSquirt MS3-Pro harness is the digital 12 volt switched input, typically used for a nitrous arming switch. So I just have to connect these together so that the MegaSquirt knows when the vintage air system wants to activate the AC compressor. I'd imagine this is going to be damn near impossible for you to see, but I'm just installing a single position WeatherPack connector, which I will use to join the two harnesses. I don't want to solder just between the two harnesses because, you know, what if I want to remove the air conditioning harness while the ECU harness is still intact? Obviously, if I had made a soldered connection between them, that would make things a little difficult. Even with WeatherPack connectors, I always put a little bit of dielectric grease on the wires, just for that extra little bit of insurance. Give that a good crimping. And I'll just slip on the connector body. Okay, the connection is made. The main power wire includes a 30 amp breaker. I cut that wire not only to shorten it and remove the extra 2 feet I didn't need, but also because not only do I need to connect the main power feed to the vintage air harness, but I also need a power feed to the relay up in the engine bay. So we'll just reconnect that to the breaker with a new set of terminals, and it will tuck up here somewhere because this is where my main fuse box is going to live, but since it's not installed for now, we'll just hang it there for the time being. The AC relay is pretty easy to wire up. One side of the coil goes to switched 12 volts. One side of the contacts goes to the constant 12 volts from the vintage air relay. And I'm currently connecting up the other side of the contacts, which goes all the way over to the trinary switch. Every connection I solder is always followed up with a thorough dousing and washing of flux remover. And insulated with double-walled, adhesive-lined heat shrink tubing. And the last connection is the other side of the relay coil via a single position WeatherPack connector to the MegaSquirt harness. The line to the compressor clutch runs through the trinary switch, which is actually a safety device that will cut the signal to the compressor if the pressure in the circuit is either too high or too low. Of course, that means that the wires have to run halfway across the bloody car. However, they will tuck very neatly underneath the whatever this thing is here, and be hidden from view. So I guess not too offensive. Incidentally, this is the same route that I'm going to take to run the passenger side headlights and marker light and turn signal wiring. So that leaves this entire side of the engine bay free from wiring. There's 4 wires on the trinary switch, so I'm using a 4-position WeatherPack, but my harness end only has 2 wires because the only circuit I need in the trinary switch is for the compressor clutch. It has a circuit for the fan, but since my ECU is controlling the fan, don't need to use those. So just 2 connectors, and she plugs right in. And of course that will tuck underneath here and look pretty. The compressor clutch, what all of this is kind of about, is the last connection. The final step in the wiring is to just connect the harness to the control panel. And that's just done by following the schematic and matching the wire colors. Now the astute viewer will notice that this is a different control panel than I originally showed. I decided to also pick up a dial control panel because it just keeps my options open for layout on the dash and is a more modern feel than the sliders. Of course, now it's time for the smoke test. I've powered the system up using jumper cables and a spare battery, so all that's left now is to turn on the blower. Okay, the blower's on low, air is moving, and there's no fire. Crank her up. Medium and high. It's currently set to bi-level, and I'm feeling air out of the vent outlets as well as the bottom outlets. So let's switch it to bottom only. And yep, looks like all the air is now directed to the floor. Top vents only. And yes, these are now open. Nothing here. What I like is actually how smoothly these vents open up. They don't just snap open. There's a gradual transition between the 2 settings. It's kind of elegant. And defrost, which should only open the defrost ducts. Yep, that's the case. Now to test the AC. The system is obviously not charged, so the trinary switch would prevent the compressor from clicking on due to lack of pressure. So I simply bypassed it with a length of wire. The AC compressor activation line is wired through the MegaSquirt. So when the thermostat calls for the AC compressor to come on, the MegaSquirt is signaled through the 12-volt input, and it takes several actions. It will raise the idle slightly, activate the cooling fan, then activate the compressor. Unfortunately, that only works while the engine is running. So I will fake it here by turning on the compressor and then manually activating the outputs on the MegaSquirt. I have already proved that it works properly by standing in the engine bay, spinning the crank sensor with my hand while twiddling the compressor input. I can't do that on camera. It would require 2 or 3 people. So here goes. Pretend the engine is running. System on medium. Compressor on, which then turns on the fan and the AC compressor. Then turning it off both of those off. The dash is back in so that I can check the clearance for the duct line. It's pretty tight back there, but it will fit. That's what she said. Now there's 3 vents. There's 2 here in the middle, and then there's 1 on each side. The side vents have these little diverters that let you select with a little valve between outside air and inside air. Now these are 2.5 inch to 3 inch vintage air duct couplers. And what I'm doing here is cutting some slots because I think that this will fit perfectly well over the square Cosmo duct so that I can easily use it to adapt the vintage air ducting to the stock Cosmo part. The idea is that it now fits right inside the Cosmo piece, and if all goes well, I should just be able to shoot in a few self-tapping screws. Look at that. I think it's actually going to work. Yep. 2 more screws, and I think that came out perfectly. Wish everything was that easy. I assembled the passenger side and driver's side in exactly the same way. Now I will just seal the gaps with a little bit of the old seam sealer, which is really stiff because it's kind of cold in here. The Defroster Ducts are next, and I think they're going to be just as easy. I'll be using these 2-inch glue-in vintage air duct adapters to convert the stock Cosmo Defrost Ducts. Just mix up some Permatex 5-minute Plasti-Weld epoxy. This stuff is incredibly strong, but man, does it ever stink. I can barely even breathe in here. Okay. I've already roughed up the inside of this duct with some sandpaper and done the same to the glue-in adapter. So just spread a bit of epoxy on the inside here and carefully insert this thing. And spread a heaping helping of epoxy on the joint. It's going to take several applications of epoxy, I think, to get this glued in as tight as it needs to. But this stuff is incredibly strong. I've fixed tons of car parts with this, and not a single one has broken. This 180-degree duct will redirect the center vent output of the evaporator down. I'll trim it about here, and then I'm going to modify this splitter to connect to the center vents in the dash. It's going to be just a little bit easier to work on this vent if this vent assembly is moved from the dash. You'll also see that I pulled the wiring harness out. I'm kind of sick of having that dangling all over my face while I was under the dash. Okay, we will start by just epoxying this as well as one can. There's not a lot of contact area, but you'll see later how I will strengthen all of this up and seal it up properly. I'm going to form this thin aluminum into pieces that will cover up these ends. Okay, we'll just start by bending it over this piece of 2.5 inch tubing, which is the same diameter as the vintage air piece. It's not too bad. Obviously needs to be trimmed a whole bunch. So let's do some marking right here. To make some notches here so that I can flatten this area out a bit. Some vice grips to give that a little 90-degree hook. Okay, that's getting there. Just a little bit more forming. Okay, a little bit of cleanup and that should be good to go. It took a little bit of bending and adjusting, but now she fits pretty well, and once the screws are in place, it'll definitely be tight enough to do the job. So I made a second one off camera, and now they just need to be attached. Once again, some self-tapping screws to secure it. Whoa! That was neat. Okay, let's try that again. Not bad at all. It's a bit wider than when it started out, so let's see if it still fits in the dash. Awesome. Kind of worried about that one, to be honest. Back in the car. Now we can begin running the ducting, and the easiest one is going to be the center vents. So it should just be a matter of popping the duct hose on, kind of getting it into position there. Make a mark for where it needs to be cut. Give or take an inch or two. And maybe that one. And over to the bench for some trimming. It's a little weird to cut because of the spiral. Right here. Not bad. The duct hose is pretty stretchy, so it fits over the plastic duct tightly. And once I know everything fits, and once I'm out of the mock-up stage, of course, I will secure everything with the supplied screws from Vintage Air. Okay, let's try that in the car. Okay, that looks like it fits shockingly well. Of course, it's just going to have to be disconnected again because got to pull the dash out to do all the other vents. Okay, before the dash can go into place, these vents need to be installed. Just reinstall these modified defroster ducts. This thing should just slip back onto the dash. Sort of. It is a real pain installing this dash, having to line this duct up with this vent. At least the driver's side can be put in afterwards with the instrument panel cover. Pop one bolt in here to hold it in place so it doesn't end up on my sternum. Well, at this point, it's mostly just a matter of routing the duct lines and cutting them to length. And I've already checked to make sure this one doesn't interfere with the steering column. I actually have a ton of room around here. So we'll just mark that up. And that's about right. Looks about right. Back in the car. That's about as awkward as finding a naked weightlifting Justin Bieber poster over your girlfriend's bed. But this end, on the other hand, should just slip right on. Excellent. Very easy. And the passenger side duct is basically the same as the driver's side. Just measure, cut, and then awkwardly shove the hose onto the things until the little barb catches, which in this case is kind of being a pain in the ass. But I think it's on now. Now the only difference is, while the driver's side took a relatively straight path, the passenger side has to have a little bit of slack in there to tuck in so that the glove box will still fit. This defroster duct was such a pain to get onto the back of the evaporator. I'm hoping that I can just cut it in place, not have to pull it out of the car. So we will see if I can manage to do this on my back and upside down. That's it, Aaron. Use the razor sharp knife right above your face. This can only work out well. That actually wasn't too bad, and it should slip on the modified Cosmo defroster quite easily. Wow. That damn stud's been the bane of my existence when trying to fit these ducts. Sent to hell now. That looks like the passenger defrost duct will squeeze tightly past the passenger heater duct. Probably about there is where I need to cut. The defrost duct needs to snake very tightly between the center and passenger heater AC duct. So I put the center duct back in and then slip the defrost duct on. That last piece to go back in are the lower center vents. And simply reconnect the duct line. Holy crap! I think that means it's done. Now that everything is in place and the system is 100% assembled, let's see the bloody thing work. I've taped some tissues over the vents, which will hopefully demonstrate airflow. Let's see, we'll set her to defog and turn it on. Immediately we see the two tissues taped to the defog vents start flapping in the old breeze. Now, there's a little bit of air leakage from a few of these other vents because the valves don't seal perfectly, but you really can't even feel it. So, to me, it's of no consequence. Let's set the system to face vents, which should activate this vent, these two, that one, and gradually close the defrost duct, which it did. Give it a bit more fan. There we go. Now let's set it to floor vent only. That should gradually close these vents. And they're now closed. And yep, there is quite a lot of blowing happening on this floor. Finally, let's turn every vent on. And there we go. We now have airflow from all the dash vents as well as the floor vents. I'm going to say that thing works.